everybody.
Wait. Okay, go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Genesis Client Services webinar for parenting. We're just going to review some housekeeping things before we get started. So just a reminder that this presentation is for educational purposes, and always remember your own situation and safety, and remembering that you are the expert in your life when considering how to implement this information in your family. We'll cover some quick things about safety. So just remembering to watch this in a safe place where only safe people can hear it. Remember to clear your browser history if there's safety concerns after you watch it. Use headphones if you are around people to ensure that no one else can hear it. And if you need to leave the live Zoom webinar, remember that you'll need to click end a couple of times and then close the page to get out. So for confidentiality, please do not use our chat feature on the Zoom. Everyone can see it and there's no way for us to delete those comments. And that means your name and comment will be seen for everybody. So we don't want that to happen to you for safety reasons. And then if you leave any comments on our YouTube video, recording your name and comment will also be seen there. So our contact information will be up at the end of this. And so if you have comments, questions, just contact us directly. For safety support, for crisis and counseling support, if you're in a crisis and need help with an emergency safety planning or situation, you can call our 24-hour hotline number, and that number is 214-946-4357. And you can speak with a trained hotline advocate on your situation and get connected to our services through our counseling or advocacy department. And then below, if you're calling during normal hours and are interested in counseling or advocacy appointments at Genesis, or you just want to speak to a counselor, you can call our number at 214-389-7700. And I mentioned this earlier, but if you do have any questions about our webinar and the information presented on, please feel free to reach out to Amber, Charlotte, or I directly, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. And lastly, here's some more hotline resources. So again, there's our phone number listed, the National Domestic Violence Hotline number listed, and then the National Suicide Hotline listed for you. So over the past few weeks, we have been using the book When Dad Hurts Mom by Landy Bancroft. And so we've been covering the information and chapters covered. So I just want to remind you again, how can this book help? It can be a great resource for educational purposes. It helps give you a better understanding of how domestic violence can impact children and your family as a whole. And it also dives into explaining how an abusive partner's parenting and abusive tactics can impact your role as a mother in your household. It guides mothers in providing children with love, support, and positive role models in the midst of domestic violence, in the midst of this trauma you're experiencing in this household. It helps you increase your understanding of court systems and success in custody cases, and give you resources when dealing with that. And it helps you again guide children through this healing process and how to support them and make them feel good when they are experiencing all of this. So as we've done in the past webinars, we want to give you a brief understanding of what domestic violence is, the different types of domestic violence, before we dive in more into the topics we're going to cover today. So domestic violence is a system diminishment of a woman in her home. And so this can happen a bunch of different forms. Some of the different forms of abuse include verbal abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. When it's happening to a mom, we know dad is humiliating her in front of her children. He's putting her down. He's making her role as a mother really, really difficult. And it's making it really hard for her to parent in the ways that she wants to parent. We know domestic violence brings distress to children. Even if you think they're not directly seeing it, they're feeling the tension in the household, and they're witnessing that emotional abuse that dad is doing to mom. We know domestic violence can impact the relationship between the mother and child. And so through the healing process, it's so important, right, that the child and mother are able to to focus on that relationship and increase their positive attachment with each other. And then we know that domestic violence can also create division amongst siblings, because everybody in the family is going to have different experiences and different feelings about this. So now I'm going to hand it over to Amber, and she's going to dive into our topics for today.
Good morning, everybody. So, like Jordan was saying, your children could have a lot of different emotional responses to separation or divorce. And if you have multiple children, they could all have different emotional responses. So it could look different for each child that you have, but a few different emotional responses that you might see. Your child might feel abandoned. They might feel like dad doesn't care about them now. If they're not seeing him as often, if he's not living in the home anymore, that might be a feeling that they have, that dad doesn't care now that he's gone. They might experience anger towards mom, blaming mom that they don't have any money or that mom left dad. They might have some feelings towards mom, feeling like she's the reason that things are different now. So they might have some anger. Confusion, they might feel love towards dad and hurt by him at the same time. This is actually a really common response, to have this complicated feeling of, I love my dad and I crave a relationship with my dad, but I'm also hurt by some of the things that he's done, and I'm scared of him sometimes, and that can be really confusing. Your child might feel emotionally safe now that they feel that it's safe for them to show their true feelings and to express themselves and express how they've been feeling. They might feel safe to do that now. Your child might feel guilt. They might feel bad about feeling glad that dad is gone, or feeling like it was their fault that dad left. Children can be really great observers, but they're not necessarily great at understanding exactly what's happening. So they might jump to a lot of conclusions about why things have happened, and that might cause them to experience some guilt. They might feel hopeful that dad will get back, or that dad will come back, that parents will get back together, longing, wishing that things were back to how it used to be. And even if that means with the abuse, they might miss, if that was their normal, if that was what they were used to, they might miss and have a grieving process of this transition and this change. They might feel pushed away emotionally because mom stopped being someone who needs protection. So maybe they felt like that was their role, of comforting mom or protecting mom after abuse occurred. And if they're no longer needed for that, they might feel like they're being pushed away emotionally. They might feel relief that dad is gone and that the abuse has stopped. They might feel sadness that dad is gone. They might ask, when is he coming back? When will I see dad again? You might notice them crying when reminded of dad. They might feel stuck in the middle between mom and dad, feeling like they have to choose sides instead of loving both parents, hearing things from both sides and feeling very stuck in the middle. They might have concern or worry about dad. Where is he going to live? What's going to happen to dad? He might hurt himself, or he might have a hard time coping with the transition because he's so sad without the family. So they might have concern about his well-being after the separation. And they might have worry that dad hates them for taking mom's side. If they feel like now they're living with mom, they might worry that dad hates them and feels like they've aligned with mom. So these are some of the emotional responses you might see in some of your kiddos. I'm going to pass it off to Amber, and she's going to talk about some of the behavioral responses that you might see.
Thanks, Charlotte. Okay, so yes, let's dive into behavior. So I want you guys to keep in mind that when we're talking about a child living in a home where there's domestic violence present, whether they see with their eyes what's going on or they can feel the tension within the home, especially during the time of a separation, that is a really traumatic event for a child. So even kids that have parents that separate when there's not domestic violence, that's also really traumatic for them. So I want everyone to keep in mind that this is really, really hard on kids. And so there might be some unpleasant behaviors that come as a result of separation. And so sometimes we see a regression, and so that's when we're seeing kiddos acting a little bit younger than their chronological age. So maybe the child is wanting to sleep with mom, or needing more attention from mom, or even having some like bedwetting or nightmares, things like that coming back up that were happening in their earlier stages of development. They might also be searching for reasons for their dad, of why he was abusive. It's really difficult for a child to reconcile the fact that my dad is this abusive person. And so they're trying to, in their little brains, or if they're teen in their brains, they're trying to look for reasons why this might have happened. And sometimes we see this come out as maybe the child is blaming mom or saying really mean things to mom. And, this happens for, a couple reasons. One, mom is safe, right? So kiddo knows that if he or she acts out, that mom is still going to be safe for them. And also there's this other piece, right, where they're trying to figure out, why did this happen? What happened to make my dad do these things? Like I said, with the regression of behavior, they might have new fears of the dark or of monsters. Sometimes we see that a lot with our younger kids in play. There's lots of monsters coming out. They might be reminding mom about the good times that they had with dad and trying to really focus on that. They might say or do the same things that the abuser used to do, right? So remember that this is their dad, and so some behaviors can be learned, and so they might be kind of mimicking some of that, which can be really hard on you as a mom, right? And so really trying to find some support for yourself in those moments, and walking away if needed when kiddo is acting like this, and just taking some space. Talking about dad as if he was a hero, right? Making up stories about dad. We see this a lot with separation, right? It's easier for the child to create kind of this fantasy world that their life would be like if they were living with their dad. And so sometimes we do see this kind of come out with kiddos. Again, sometimes the symptoms are a little less obvious. So this might mean that they're having trouble sleeping, and you may not know that if they're older, especially, or maybe they're not as hungry as they were before, or maybe their appetite has really increased. Some whining, demanding, and complaining going on, and then some disobedience, right? So not following rules, breaking rules, or yelling at mom. So those are really common responses. Your child doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have all of those behaviors, but we want to make sure that you know that those are really normal behaviors that a child might have after a separation or while living in a home with an abusive parent. And so what can you do? Try to be sensitive to your child's feelings and try to understand where they're coming from in that. This doesn't mean that we don't discipline, right? This doesn't mean that there aren't rules or boundaries that you're setting with your child, but it does mean that we're being empathetic, and we're really trying to be understanding of why they might be having these behaviors. So following through with consequences, it's really going to be important to be consistent. So if child is having visitations with dad, chances are is that home is not going to have the consistency that you might have in your home. And so really creating that structure for them and being as consistent as you can, especially with consequences or rule breakings, remembering to still keep boundaries while you're being understanding and sensitive to their feelings. Let your children know that you love them, even when they're mad at you, right? So it's okay to get mad at me. It doesn't mean I don't love you anymore. Paying attention to your own feelings so you can understand how your children might feel, right? So you're going through this too. So how did you feel when this first started? How are you feeling going through this separation? That might help give you some insight into how your child might be feeling. Setting some firm limits that children do need to respect you. Again, what we mentioned on the one of the first slides, right? We know that in the home, there might have been this atmosphere in which you were not respected as the mom. And so now you're trying to, change that and create this environment in which you are respected. And so being mindful that this is a change, so it might take some time, but also being really firm in those limits, that your children do need to respect you. Showing understanding that they're confused and have lots of negative feelings going on, right? Getting them into counseling, you know, it's really going to be helpful for them to have a safe place, someone who's outside of this situation to process through some of these feelings that they're having, to give them some education on what is going on with them, on why they're maybe having these behaviors, and then even having some family counseling. So working together with your child to rebuild that attachment. We know that when women are living in a home with an abusive man, it's very difficult to parent the way that you may want to parent. And so really getting into counseling to help rebuild that attachment with your child, and just trusting the healing process, because this does take time. You know, this isn't going to just be a change that happens overnight. And so just being mindful and trusting in that process. And finally, try to create times to have fun. You know, we have really busy schedules now and we have lots of things going on, but try to really schedule in some family time, whether that's, you know, going outside and going for a walk together, or, you know, every third Friday of the month is movie night and we make popcorn and we watch a movie together. You know, really trying to figure out what works best for your family and how you can create some really special memories for your child in the midst of this stuff that they're dealing with. Okay, and so also in remembering that in coming to these webinars, in seeking help and in seeking guidance, you're taking a really big step, a really brave step towards healing for yourself and your family. We know that this isn't easy. We know that this is a really difficult situation. And so, you know, just showing yourself some grace and remembering this does take time. And also that we're here for you at Genesis if you need any further support. And remembering also that as a mother, you hold your child's hand for a short while, but you hold their hearts forever. So please feel free to reach out to us. Here's our contact information. If there are any questions that you have about anything that we've presented in today's webinar, or even ones from the past, feel free to reach out to us. We will be transitioning and having these monthly. So on the first Wednesday of every month, starting in October, that's when you will see Jordan, Charlotte, and I presenting these parenting webinars. And so we look forward to seeing you again, and thank you so much for being here.